This is Apologetics Live. To answer your questions, your host from Striving for Eternity Ministries, Andrew Rappaport.
Well, we are live, Apologetics Live, here to answer your most challenging questions that you have about God and the Bible. I'm your host, Andrew Rappaport, the president of Striving for Eternity, and also the Christian podcast community. This live stream gets turned into a podcast that we have there. Now, here at Apologetics Live, we are here to answer your challenging questions. So if you have challenging questions for us, or you just want to say hi even, you can go to apologeticslive.com. You see it scrolling at the bottom there, and then you will be able to join us in the discussion. Now, again, I'm solo tonight as far as so far. I changed how I was going to do an open Q&A. I've been collecting questions, and then I listened to a podcast, which is now a YouTube video, and it was both. I'll put it in the comments of the podcast when that goes out, and I'll try to remember to put it in the into the show notes for the YouTube link, I should say, after the fact. But I just dropped it in the chat for those who are watching live to Cross Politics video they have called "How the SBC Got Played," and so we want to talk about that today. And so just give a quick shout out to those who are watching. Brother John up in Canada, So he is an evangelist up there, and so we're glad that he's here. We got to get John. You got to come in one of these times. I think you have Bible study like right after, so you pop in for a little bit. But we got to get you on, talk about some of your evangelism, and so that would be good. I'm not sure. Andrew is saying YouTube strikes again. Andrew from Australia. So I'm not sure what happened that he said it strikes again. You'll have to clue me in there. But what I do want to do is deal with this topic of the SBC. Now I want to encourage you guys. I'm going to play some clips from the documentary that they did over at Cross Politic. It's not very often you go on to X, formerly Twitter, so the X Twitter, and be able to sit there and say, wow, there's some encouragement on social media. But that happened today as I watched this documentary, and there were things that went on with this whole issue with the SBC that we'll cover that never added up to me. And so this documentary is a short documentary. It's only, it's like 40 minutes long, I think. Yeah, 42 minutes long. And let me just turn that a little brighter so we have better light in here. But what, in 42 minutes, they covered so much. Now, I'm going to say that I have not gone and done the checking to check all the resources they had, check their, the claims. I'm in the process. I talked to one of the guys earlier, and so I got some background, but I want to get more details before I just go, okay, this is 100%. But there are a lot of things that they said, well, that I had noticed as well. So I did ask permission of those guys to play some clips of the show. I got a clip that was sent to me quite late. That is, I was told I could share it, but it's not out on, I guess, maybe publicly, and I didn't get a chance to watch it. So maybe a later time I'll get to play that one. So I want to give a little bit of a background, though, on the whole issue with the SBC, what it is that was going on, and kind of how we got where we are, right? So when we look at the SBC, it's the Southern Baptist Convention, if those who are unaware, you had the Southern Baptist Convention was started to go left. That's not unusual. In fact, every single denomination ends up going leftist over time. They start going more and more liberal. And I remember I was asking one of my seminary professors why that was back when I was in seminary, back in Noah's day. And it was very interesting what he said. He said, men who want to be political go into denominational positions. Those that want to be pastors, that don't want politics, they serve in the church. Now, I was non-denominational, so was my seminary, but it was interesting what he was saying, because it is a thing where those who really care about being shepherds, they want to serve in a church. I'll give you a great example. A guy who could be, he would be on the speaking circuit if he wanted to be. I personally think the best preacher, at least alive, or that I have heard, my favorite preacher, the best I've really ever heard, is Jim Osmond. Jim Osmond is an outstanding preacher and pastor. And if you want, on the Christian Podcast Community, go christianpodcastcommunity.org, you can listen to his services. They're the Kootenai Community Church. That's the podcast, and you can listen to the Sunday services and listen to his great preaching. But he could be on the circuit preaching all over the place because he's great. But he is in the very same church he got saved in, and it's the only church he's ever been a member of. He went off to Bible college, came back to the same church, is now preaching there. And he has no interest in going anywhere but there. Why? Because he's got a shepherd's heart. But then you get those people who just love the fame. Al Mohler. Oh, did I say that name out loud? Sorry. You could go back to my Rappaport podcast. If you go to the rappaport.org and do a search for Al Mohler, you'll see. And if you search for, I think it's Al Mohler, you can sound like you can have your cake and eat it too. And I did 2 parts to that, because what I addressed with Al Mohler was the fact that he speaks out of both sides of his mouth because he's a politician. Andrew from Down Under is saying Mr. Woke Mueller. That we'll get there, Andrew. You're not far off. So what I had issue with was, this was back, if you remember, when Al Mohler and Mark Dever, Lincoln Duncan were at a Q&A at the Shepherds Conference, and the issue of social justice came up. And Al Mohler was greatly offended that people did not, stand up and say that he was fighting against social justice. But he wouldn't sign the statement on social justice in the gospel that, a lot of us had formulated and written up. And, I'm saying that because I was one of the early, not just the other early adopters. I was, if you look at the statement of social justice in the gospel, you will see that I'm one of the ones who was the early 75 that had gotten together. We wrote a letter and signed our name to John MacArthur to ask him to put his weight behind the statement we were writing. And then 19 of them got together and really finalized a bunch of it, nailed stuff down, and then sent it out to the rest of us for review. And there's been thousands of people who have signed that document on social justice and the gospel, because we see a danger to the gospel from the social justice movement. And that's not new for here. Anyone that's been here for any length of time knows that, because we've talked about that a lot on the show. And so I say that to say that Al Mohler wouldn't sign it, along with Lincoln Duncan, along with Mark Dever. And there was a Q&A, and Al Mohler, just for background, in case it's been a long time, so you may not remember all that, but, Lincoln Duncan, Mark Dever, they were in the green room. Phil Johnson comes in, and he told them these are some of the questions he's going to ask them. They had a heads up. Al Mohler was not there. So Al Mohler was caught off guard, right? And so I think that's why there was so much of the Al Mohler versus Phil Johnson. I have not watched the recent panel discussion where there was, I guess, none of that. But the thing is that when I was there, I remembered Al Mohler did a podcast on his podcast where he ended up arguing about a politician from Canada who would not take a stand on homosexuality. And he was saying you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't. The guy claimed to be a Catholic, not a Christian Catholic. So he was a Catholic Canadian politician. And he was trying to hem and haw around the issue of homosexuality. And Al Mohler did a whole episode, or a whole segment, I should say, on this politician saying that he can't have his cake and eat it too. He can't claim to be Catholic. Well, I think if I remember correctly, Al Mohler said you can't claim to be Christian. And have, I'm trying to look right now to see if I have any of those clips that I could play right here. But he claimed you couldn't be Catholic. At least I think he might have said Christian, but you can't do that and claim to be or not have a clear answer on the issue of homosexuality. And so I felt that was disingenuous. He said, I'll play his own clip here. He said this.
Trying to have your cake and eat it too is thus a metaphor for trying to have it both ways. It is impossible.
So he says it is impossible. He was saying that you have to, well, we'll play his own words.
Must be ready to give a direct and honest answer when we are asked a question about sin. That might come, indeed it will come, with a considerable political cost, but failing to answer the question comes with an even deeper cost to both theology and doctrine and to personal ethics.
So he says there that there will be a cost, and you must answer. You have to be ready to answer a direct question. And so I challenged it because at the time there was, a Southern Baptist named Beth Moore. She was at that time Southern Baptist and spoke for Southern Baptists. And she had, she wouldn't take a stand on homosexuality. In fact, in her book that was on Kindle, there was only one book that she ever mentioned homosexuality, and she called it a sin, and she removed it. And there was a public letter asking her to answer what her position is on homosexuality. Many women had joined together and signed to say, hey, Beth Moore, give us your answer. And she refused. So I asked the question publicly to Al Mohler, you can't have your cake and eat it too. This is not some politician from Canada. This is a United States speaker in Christianity, not Roman Catholicism, Christianity on homosexuality. So the same topic, homosexuality. So if a politician from Canada who claims to be Catholic, so he's not even saved probably, if he has to answer for it, shouldn't Beth Moore? Oh no, because she's Southern Baptist. So he refused to address the issue. And then when he went off and talked about the fact where he was saying that at the Shepherds Conference that he claimed, he was fighting for, this stuff for so long, and anyone can see it. But the thing is that he wasn't really addressing the issue of the Southern Baptists and what they were doing with social justice. Okay, so this is not new for me to address these issues. Maybe some of these on this show and not my Rappaport, but what you did have is you had a denomination, the Southern Baptist Convention, that started going liberal. As it started going liberal, there were many that got together and brought about what was referred to as the conservative resurgence. Now, this was historic. There's not been, to my knowledge, any denomination that started going liberal that came back to a conservative position. And so this is something that was different. This was something that was what they were trying to do. And I remember I had a conversation. It's not like I know Mark Dever personally. I had a conversation with him when he was at my seminary, at our conference, the seminary's conference. And I got to spend a little bit of time with him. And in that situation, I got to find out what his thinking was when these guys did the conservative resurgence. And he told me, he said, we had a 20-year plan. We knew it was not going to be easy. They started in the late 70s, and it took till the 1990s for this to come about. You had men like Adrian Rogers, Paige Patterson, C.A. Criswell, who fought for biblical inerrancy, fought for conservatism. They fought for a resurgence that ended up succeeding. And the thing is that though it succeeded, men like Al Mohler, Mark Dever, Lincoln Duncan, others who fought for conservatism ended up bringing on or really ignoring the liberalism that came in. In fact, I would argue they helped promote it because they did the very things that caused it to go liberal the first time. They were more concerned with preserving the institution than they were concerned about preserving the truth. And as it became more about the institution, then the truth falls by the wayside. You can see this in many different areas. Okay, you see it in big ministries. You could see it in politics. You see people. Look right now. As of this recording right now, you have most of the American people are in favor of the Save America Act, which is to ask for voter ID, proof of citizenship, to vote. 80% of Americans support this, and the Democrats in lockstep are voting no on it. Why? Is it really that they're against it? And I know that everyone's saying it's because they want to cheat. Well, that may be. But I think there's another aspect to it as well. People get institutionally minded. It's tribalism. And what you see happen over and over and over again is people will ignore truth because this is our party, this is our tribe, this is our camp, whatever language you want to use. But people start to fight not for truth, but for their group. In this case, SBC. You see this, if you work in, I'm just going to say, if you work in certain areas, companies where they're gonna ignore facts and truth of where they're going to get in trouble, and for the sake of the company. I've seen this in federal agencies where they have to protect the agency. In other words, if we were to say that we made a mistake, people are going to go, oh, that's it. You can't trust the agency. And so you have stuff like this. And so this is what I think happened with the SBC. These men who fought for the conservative resurgence in the 70s to 90s ended up focusing more on the institution than the truth. And in that, things slept in. Let me play. I'm going to admit up front that I'm going to be playing clips from the documentary that these guys did. I'm not going to play all of it. The problem is that the only way I could play this was where I didn't have a whole lot of clips to it. So let me put this in, and I'm going to play it here.
I feel like this is my deposition or something. So it's July 23rd, 2019. I'm working for Founders Ministry, and we released our first trailer for the documentary By What Standard. In that trailer, there's one image that appears for just a bit over a second.
Now, you guys may not remember this. I remember this. But this was a thing where there was a lot of blowback from this. And I stopped it at this point because I want you to see, you can't even see who this is. And I know that there were people who were working on the documentary or supporting the documentary that didn't recognize who this was and didn't have an issue until it was known who it was. I'm going to let these guys share who it is and the issue. And I'm going to play a little bit of a clip because I want them to be able to explain the 5 points of how to undermine an organization and how they do it, because this is what's going on in America and England and all over the world, in the Western world right now. It's always taking down conservatism. But here we go. Let me keep playing.
Twice. It's blurred, and it's of a woman who's sitting on a panel.
9 days later, 3 board members resigned, not over a scandal.
It was because they did not want to be associated with questioning that woman.
That woman? Her name was Rachel Den Hollander. Attorney, abuse survivor, the face of #MeToo evangelicalism. 4 years later, court documents would prove the trailer was right.
Massive conflicts of interest, a compromised investigation, over $1 million to her client.
And $13 million drained from the largest conservative Protestant denomination in America.
Now, I'm going to stop here just to say, I want you to notice this, because a lot of this is about money. You're going to see that if you watch the whole trailer. I'm not going to play the whole trailer. I was tempted to just like play this here so you guys all see it. But I do want you guys to go and check out the full episode that they did. But they lay out a really good case that this is about money. This is where a lot of this was. And it was also, I think, about a little bit of fame maybe for Rachel Den Hollander, because, well, she did get famous from this. But this is, they open with this because this is where there was so much backlash when they came out with that documentary. Tom Askold came out with the documentary. I just lost the name of it too. And he just, he just mentioned it, By What Standard? So when they came out with that, and I encourage you to go check out that documentary because it was trying to address these issues. This is back when, if you think about, if you guys know, there was that, the Southern Baptists got together and they had a resolution that they tried to slip in where, so that no one would vote against it. They grouped it together with a whole bunch of them. Oh, it's because it's late on time. Let's just group this together. Resolution 9, and this is in the 2019 SBC annual convention. And Tom Askold and others were saying, no, let's vote this one at a time. And so they did. And people voted in, social justice as a tool. And that is where a lot of people started to realize what was happening in the SBC. Now, there were plenty beforehand that were seeing it and warning about it, and they were being silenced. And so this slow resurgence of liberalism was making its way into the Southern Baptists, through social justice. And Cross Politic, the guys at Cross Politic did a good job of explaining this. And I'm saying this because, look, folks here know, I've not been shy about this. I don't agree theologically with the guys from Cross Politic. We have a lot of different views. But I do know at least 2 of the 3 guys. I've met all 3. But I know 2 of them well. And though we disagree, this is something that I completely agree with them on. And so one of the things is we got to get out of this tribalism where if you don't agree with me, I can't accept anything you do. No, we look for the best in people. That's what we do. And so I see what they're doing here, and I'm really appreciative of the way they lay this out. So let me continue because I really want you guys to see how they lay out these 5 points.
But by then, it was too late.
Most people think that the abuse crisis in the SBC was straightforward. There were just predators in pulpits, a denomination that looked the other way, and survivors who just finally got justice. But that's not the story. That's the story you've heard, but that's not what happened.
In 1996, an economist named Gary North wrote a book called Crossfingers, How the Liberals Captured the Presbyterian Church.
He documented a 5-phase playbook over how you take over a denomination from the inside. Not with theology, but with procedure.
Phase 1, you exploit the moral vulnerability that the other side can't defend. Phase 2,
redefine who the real threat is. Phase 3, force a procedural change your opponents can't survive.
Phase 4, fill the empty seats. Phase 5, inherit everything.
And the Southern Baptist Convention, they followed the script almost step by step. And we're going to show you how they did it.
Okay, so what they're going to do at this point is they're going to walk through the step-by-step of what ended up happening with those 5 points. Now, I'm not going to play all of that, but I do want to try and get to a couple of things here that I thought was very interesting, and I want to get highlights is what I'm looking for. And so I may end up playing a little bit more than I would want to and may not jump in at a great point because it's really hard to get this little tiny marker down there to get just right. But I want to try. And so the issue that I see here is you'll end up seeing they're going to lay out the case that there was this a liberalism that was seeping in. And you saw this. Look, we've done, if you go back on Apologetics Live here, we talked about with Pastor Casey Butner and Justin Peters about First Baptist Church of Orlando, and they're practicing. They had practicing homosexuals doing baptisms and deacons and whatnot, and so that's a Southern Baptist. That we talked about the North America Missions Board and how their involvement and what they were doing, and there seems to be. I haven't been able to. I've heard this from good sources, but I don't know. I haven't seen the actual documentation, so I'm saying that to say this could be right, this could be wrong, but my understanding is that NAMB, which, as I said, was the North America Missions Board, was the donors or big donor between the $100 million of the He Gets Me campaign or He Gets Us campaign. The He Gets Us campaign is that big, liberal where they're trying to show a woke Jesus. If they're the ones behind that, I've always said, look, go get Megan Basham's book. And I interviewed her for her book on the Rappaport podcast. You can go search that. But Shepherds for Sale. And she shows how the Southern Baptist Church has been, just how it has been on this path and how it's been getting money from liberal funding. Follow the money, right? Liberal funding that was getting them to push for a lot of this stuff. And so, now today we see them. They're you had that, what was in some time ago in 2023, 2024, you had Rick Warren and the whole issue of Saddleback and women pastors. They're trying to push it. And though they couldn't get it to be super clear what ended up happening, they ended up at least getting it where it was, they're saying, okay, they're not going to say it's right or wrong, and then you see a whole bunch of churches, they're not kicking out when they have women pastors, even though they're trying to say it's wrong, but they're not actually enforcing it. And so this is what we end up seeing. So let me play this next clip.
Is needed. Crisis can be found.
While we were there was a new abuse victim.
Okay, let me set this up because I started a little bit. I wanted to get it 45 seconds earlier. So this is just before they were voting. I think it was Ed Litton. It was Ed Litton versus Stone, and I forget Stone's first name, but this is what happened the night before. So Stone was the conservative. Had he won, there would have been a conservative to take the reins of the Southern Baptists. And the liberals couldn't allow that. And so what happened? Remember, Me Too movement. Everyone has to believe the woman. A woman would never lie. Oh, right. Yeah, like that. We don't see that in history, where women would pursue men to take advantage of them and then use it against them. But that's where they're catching up. So this is now the night before the vote, where Stone was looking like, I think his name was Sam Stone, but Stone was looking to be the guy he had the lead, and then this story comes out. So let's play this.
Supposedly, we don't know because all the police reports say that nothing was ever done to her. All the police reports, all the investigations.
I do have to try to back this up because this is going to be too hard for. Let me just back it up a bit. Here we go.
Your own by one of your own, including members of your executive committee.
Leading into the 2021 convention, conservatives backed Mike Stone for president. But when crisis is needed, crisis can be found.
While we were there was a new abuse victim. Supposedly, we don't know because all the police reports say that nothing was ever done to her. All the police reports, all the investigations find nothing. But Hannah Kate Williams, they trot her out.
I would like to see leaders taking the recommendations of outside experts, not as attacks on their beliefs, but as tools to protect those in their care.
Okay, I want to stop it right there, but I got to put myself back on screen. Did you hear the language she used? She wants them to look at outsiders, people who are not in the SBC, not in the church, as experts. And what did she say? As tools, right? What's that language? That's the exact language of Resolution 9, of social justice being a tool, something that could be used for this stuff. This is the very language of the left, the very language of those who are pushing for this liberalism. So when you hear that, and I'm just going to say, you got to go watch the full documentary or the full episode. It's only 42 minutes. The reality is what they end up exposing is that, yeah, she ended up discrediting some of her own claims, but along with many of the women that they had as experts. And so this is a thing that you end up seeing is here. What did they end up doing? They end up trying to get to a point where their whole argument is undermined by leftism. All right. And so I want to play this next thing because I think the biggest issue, there was one of the most damning ones, was this Guidepost report that came out. And I'm hoping that I got this at the right point.
They completely transferred power to their own faction over the period of those 2 years. And that's what it was all about.
Okay, let me back up a little bit more from this, because I got to try to get this to where they were explaining the history. So here we go.
He added, time has run out. That's not a pastor offering counsel. That's the most powerful man in the SBC telling the executive committee, surrender or be remembered as the people who protected abusers.
Every seminary president.
Okay, so what he was talking about there is the fact of what they tried to do was say, they basically asked everyone to support what they were doing. And the argument was, if you didn't support this going after people, where they basically asked everyone to give up attorney-client privilege, therefore, in discovery, anything that you say to your attorney could be used. So what do you think the opposition is going to say? They're going to subpoena your own attorney to use every conversation you had with your attorney against you, giving you no counsel, because anything you say in discussing with the attorney, guess what? They can go and they could get it in discovery, which means they know exactly what you're going to argue in court. Why? Because it's discoverable now, and it's part of the case. That's why the attorneys were like, yeah, we're resigning. We're not doing this. Smart men, because they understood what it meant. So some 40 men were like, no, yeah, let's just go with this. And so what they ended up doing is they use the argument, they come up with this manufactured thing of abuse against young girls. Who in their right mind is going to say, no, we should be for sexual abuse of young ladies? No pastor is going to do that. So they came up with a narrative that everyone would go with. Now, let me give the comparison politically. What do we see in our culture? People arguing for transgenders. How do they argue? Do they argue that, well, this is just a mental illness that we should accept? No, they don't argue based off of truth. They say, oh, you're claiming that these people don't exist? You're dehumanizing them? So you support dehumanizing people? You're a Nazi. Is that not the language of the left? Is that not the language that they use? Same thing here. They argued that if you didn't support what the SBC leaders were saying, well, then you're supporting the abusers. Georgia here says, wow, very deceitful. That's right. That is exactly what you see here. That's the whole thing that they're exposing, is the deceit, because it sounds like you're coming from a position of a moral authority. You're fighting for something that everyone would say is just and right. But meanwhile, it's all a lie. Now you say, Andrew, come on, it can't really be all a lie. Hold that thought.
Followed Albert Mohler's lead. Every denominational lead they piled on as well. And the executive committee members, those 86 people responsible for the SBC's finances, properties, legal protections, they were all being told by their leadership that defending fiduciary duty was the same as defending abuse.
So they had a fiduciary responsibility to the SBC, and yet if they basically just gave away lots of money to lawsuits, that's the right thing to do, because otherwise you're supporting abuse. Now, could you have a good fiduciary responsibility and do what's right financially for the SBC and at the same time do what's right morally? Yeah. But that's assuming, even if you assume that there was the 700 plus people that were abused in the supposed claim, you'll see why I say supposed, but it becomes a thing of, you can still stand up for that and not say, well, let's just give everything over, right? Because they end up giving $1 million to this girl that Rachel Den Hollander was representing as an attorney. And this is one of the things they'll bring out too. She was representing as an attorney, a client who's suing the SBC while she's working with the SBC on how to handle. She was a spokesman for how to handle sexual abuse cases. Does that help her client? Yes, it helps her client when she's going to get more money. She's going to have a better outcome when Rachel's not only suing the SBC, but counseling the SBC on how to handle things. And then she ends up being the one that this Guidepost report that all comes out, turns out, guess who is behind that? The same Rachel Den Hollander. Oh, so she's representing a client who's suing the company that the SBC that she's also counseling on how to handle the abuses, and she's the one working with the Guidepost to write the report that everyone sees and says, oh, this is really bad. Because when that Guidepost report came out, that's when everyone said, this is really bad. It's worse than we thought. So much so, I don't know if you guys even remember this, but I kind of, at the time on the show here, I called it irony or poetic justice. I forget how I explained it back then, but the fact that here's the SBC going woke and they're trying to fight, we want to show we could be woke. And what happened? They put the Guidepost report out and let it out there to make it look like they're covering up 700 plus women who had been abused. And the Biden administration got involved. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, oh, wait. And I thought that was the irony of that they're trying to show they could be so woke. And the Biden the Biden administration, whoever was really running things, they did not want to have they wanted every opportunity to attack Christianity. And here's the Southern Baptists serving it up on a platter going, hey, look at us. You could take our head off. We're bad guys. Look, we've done all these bad things. And so they went after and did an investigation. Anyone remember what happened with the results of that investigation? Oh, right. It went nowhere. You know why? Because there was nothing there. It was all in the Guidepost report, but as the cross politics guys go over and discuss, the reality is there was no there. They end up arguing for the fact that you have this report, and in court documents that come out later, what do we find out? It was Rachel Den Hollander who was influencing the report while she had I had a client that was suing the SBC while working with the SBC on how to handle abusers. She got some name recognition. She got some money. Her clients got some money. What about all of the innocent people whose names were mentioned in Guideposts? I'm going to name some of them. And you look at their lives being destroyed, their ministries being destroyed. Also that, one woman can get her name out there? Oh, now I'm supporting an abuser, am I? Because I'm against Rachel Den Hollander? No, I'm not supporting abuse at all. In fact, I'm against abuse, all abuse, including that of this woman, Rachel Den Hollander, who decided that she was going to be one to be the spokesman for all these women, even if they were making it up. If a woman makes up a story about a man claiming that she was sexually abused when she wasn't, when she had a consensual relationship, not saying it's the right thing, it's a sin on both parties, but when she does it and then lies about it, that's abuse. I'm just saying. So let's listen to a little bit more.
They wanted us to waive attorney-client privilege because we have nothing to hide. Well, but that's not why you have such a thing as attorney-client privilege. Attorney-client privilege is a fiduciary duty, and it is a legal, ethical requirement necessary to allow clients to be able to speak honestly with their legal representation. If you don't have that, then every single discussion is discoverable. They can't talk to their lawyer meaningfully. And it's just absurd. It's so absurd that at the same time, the Biden Justice Department instructed U.S. attorneys that they may not ever ask anybody they're prosecuting to waive attorney-client privilege. That's how unethical this was.
Fiduciary duty isn't a technicality. It's a covenant bond. This applies to attorney-client privilege, doctor-patient privilege, husband-wife privilege. Remove that protection, and the people who need it most lose everything.
But notice the frame. Anyone who defends fiduciary duty is protecting the abuser. The institution's own legal safeguards became evidence of guilt. Defending procedure becomes proof you have something to hide.
Now, I want you to think of that through. What Gabe just said there, because that's very important how they operate. And you see this exactly in politics. Maybe you see this in your workplace. If you're going to stand up against some of this liberalism, where maybe you're in your workplace and you're being asked, hey, you need to take this course on critical race theory or CTR, which is what that truthfully stands for is, CRT. Now they call it critical race theory, but really what it is cultural racism training. And so they are training people to be racists. And you may have at your job site where you have that. And you got to take these classes and show that you understand how if you're a white man, you're just so privileged and you don't have rights. You've been oppressing everybody. Even if your boss is a black woman or better yet, a black lesbian woman, and she's your boss, you're still oppressing her. Because that is the model that they have. Why do they do that? Because if you say, hey, wait a minute, I'm not oppressing anybody, they go, oh, you got something to hide. You must have something in your background. That's how they use it. And they used it in the SBC, and Gabe was just sharing that. I want to try and get a couple minutes ahead, but because it's hard for me to scroll to the exact spot, I'm just going to play a little bit longer of a clip.
That's a lose-lose situation.
This is the actual genius of phase 2. You don't have to prove anyone is guilty of anything. You just have to make defending the institution look like defending abuse. And once that frame is locked in, the real damages begin.
Phase 3.
And this is what I wanted to get to.
Procedural surrender. So the pressure is enormous. 1,000 pastors, 6 seminary presidents, every survivor advocate in the country, all saying the same thing: waive the privilege or you're complicit. On October 5th, 2021, the executive committee voted. 44 in favor, 31 against. 17 members resigned in protest. 6 were attorneys or financial professionals. They understood exactly what was happening. Maybe the most stunning resignation of all, Jim Gunther, age 87. He had been general counsel for the SBC Executive Committee since 1966. 55 years, had never lost a case.
In his resignation letter, he said this: we simply do not know how to advise a client when the client indicated a willingness to forgo this universally accepted principle of confidentiality.
55 years, unblemished record, and an 87-year-old man walked away because he would not participate in what he knew was wrong.
24 people are gone. They're all opponents of the leftists. J.D. Greer, Russell Moore, Rachel Den Hollander, Grant Gaines, the rest of them, and above all, probably Jared Wellman on the executive committee. And because they were all gone, it's an 86-member committee. So J.D. Greer was able to fill all those seats with people to his liking, and they carried out their coup. They completely transferred power to their own faction over the period of those 2 years. And that's what it was all about.
The 44 men who voted yes were like the 3 men that resigned from Founders. They feared the backlash more than the breach itself. They thought that waiving the privilege would prove that they were the good guys.
Now, I want to point this out. So African Sheep is asking, is anyone else getting an echo? So if you guys are getting an echo, please let me know in the chat, because I shouldn't be getting an echo through the way that I'm playing it. I'll be concerned. Major echo. All right. That could be bad. Sorry about that. I thought that by playing it through StreamYard or through the stream that it wouldn't have that, because it's in there. I thought I'd be more likely to have it. I was trying to account for the fact that we used to get the echo when I played it in the browser. So sorry about that. I hope it's still something you guys could pick up what is being said. But, you know, so let me just...
They had no idea what they had just...
Over the period of those 2 years. And that's what it was all about.
The 44 men who voted yes were like the 3 men that resigned from Founders. They feared the backlash more than the breach itself. They thought that waiving the privilege would prove that they were the good guys. They had no idea what they had just made possible.
Now, I'm saying, so listen to what he said. These people thought, just like the SBC, like I said with the Biden, they're waving the flag saying, hey, look, we agree with you on privilege. We're totally with you. Yeah, it's, you know, you have all this. And what ends up happening? What becomes the issue? What do you end up seeing? They end up sitting there and going, okay, you're claiming all this, and we're going to now go after you. So think about this. Is this any different what we've been talking about on this show the last couple of weeks now about Islam? What do? They come in. Oh, we just are a religion. You're Islamophobic. You're against us. You don't like our religion. You should be nice. And then what happens when these people end up going, oh, okay, no, we're not against Islam. We're not against Islam. Do they back off? No. I mean, I think the picture of the Muslim who is jumping over the protester, who is arguing that let illegals into the country because New York should be open for all, as the guy is throwing a bomb over the guy. This is what you end up seeing. This is not something unique to the strategies of the SBC leftists. This is the way leftists work all through history. These are the ploys of Satan, always with the means of deception. So what do you have? You have these people who will make it where if you were daring to say anything against what the leftists are doing, then you are supporting the abuse. And then when you cower in fear, my bride and I were talking over dinner how it is that all of these Western countries that are just giving into Islam. Because I haven't verified the report, but I saw something online that said that Japan voted to not allow mosques and prayers on the streets and things like that. And so as you end up seeing that, you have a country that stands up for their own culture. And we were discussing, well, why is it the West is like giving into it? Fear. Terrorism works. And terrorism isn't only in dropping bombs. What Rachel Den Hollander did and what these leftists and the Southern Baptists did was called terrorism. Why? Because they attacked people personally until they were so afraid to go up against them. So they just backed away. And eventually they try to give in. And what happens when you give in? They end up just going, okay, now that you've given a little, we're taking the whole thing. This is what happened with the Southern Baptist Convention. This is what you ended up seeing. And that's the issue that you end up having. Because there's an echo, I didn't realize there'd be an echo. I really thought this would, by putting it into the stream, it would not have the echo. And I didn't want to play it off of YouTube because then I could get commercials or ads and things. So let me just cover a couple things that I wanted. I'll encourage you guys to go to Cross Politic on YouTube. And this particular video is called How the SBC Got Played. And that's what happened. They got played. I want to cover a couple things. I already addressed the fact that Rachel Den Hollander was the attorney. There was one thing when this report came out from Guidepost, okay? And this came out, according to Cross Politic, this came out in the court documents. And that was that, well, the Guidepost didn't have a legal right to do this report. They had to be there were certain legal things of being private detectives or, of the, officers of law to be able to do an investigation like this, and they're not. And so they took this report from Rachel Den Hollander's. Basically, what they admitted to in court was that they did not do an investigation. So this big report, a 288-page, report with devastating findings, and we find out that all they did was go to women that said they were abused and took their word for it. Think about that. They were there saying, oh, you say you were abused? You say this person abused you? Did they go to the sources? No. They didn't go to any of the first-hand sources. There's one that I thought interesting when this came out. I think it was probably the biggest name was Johnny Hunt. He's a pastor, or was a pastor, down in Georgia. I forget exactly where I was at. I've been at his church. And when this came out, I found it very interesting because there were things that I remember reading that report and said, there's real problems. I mean, here you have an adult woman. So let me give you the background if you don't know it. The claim, some has been substantiated. Some I'm going to say is not. But the claim was that for many years, Johnny Hunt was having an affair with, I forget, either it was one of the other elders or deacons' wives. They would go, they went to a retreat place once, and he came in her room, and the claim is that he would force himself upon her. But she, someone who was in her 20s, 30s, didn't think it was abuse for 10 years until she was sitting and talking to her counselor. She never said it was anything other than consensual. You would think that an adult woman knows what abuse is. You would think that an adult woman, you might say it's different if you have a 5-year-old or even a 12-year-old, maybe even a 15-year-old. But someone in their 20s and 30s, I think she would know what abuse is. And I think that she would be trying to avoid spending time with the abuser, not making time for the abuser. When you look at some of the cases and you start looking into it and you see that they're saying, oh, this person abused me. The case that Rachel Den Hollander defended, I think her name was Jennifer, I forget her last name, but the one that Rachel Den Hollander got $1 million from the SBC for. It turns out that she ended up having messages where she couldn't be without the guy. She was missing the guy. That doesn't sound like someone that was being abused. So what you end up seeing in this whole thing is that this was a long-term game to get back the SBC from the conservative resurgence. And it happened right under the nose of those who were fighting for the conservative resurgence. And what did they do? They forced out some of those people that, like Paige Patterson, he was forced out under abuse charges. I don't know if those are true. Why? Because it was never actually proven. They made the case. One of the things that Hollander did was when people would go and address this, she attacked the person as supporting abusers. I actually had this happen to me when I was at a conference and there was a pastor speaking, and the pastor, this woman contacted me telling me that I shouldn't go, I got to not go to this conference because this pastor's an abuser. I never met this guy before. I know nothing about him. All right, I need to dig into this. I end up hearing his side of the story. But see, the woman who this lady's saying she's a friend of, the woman who's involved isn't going to meet with me and the pastor. Well, that's what you do. You hear both sides of an argument. And so what you end up finding out is she's going around just saying that her husband's an abuser Because what? He didn't agree with her. She was making a claim. There wasn't the support for it. And then if the pastor, because the pastor didn't take her side, he was accused of being an abuser. And then because I wouldn't call him the pastor an abuser, I was an abuser. You see how this gets played. If you don't agree with the leftist view, you're the abuser. And what that's supposed to do is to get you to cower and to fear and to back down and say, okay. Anything you want, just don't call me that. This is what the liberals have been doing to conservatives for years in this country. They use the word racist. You disagree with Barack Obama, you're racist. No, I disagree with Barack Obama. Has nothing to do with the color of his skin. But you see, they throw that word around and get you to cower so that you are in fear. And people give into it hoping that, well, if I give in, they're going to stop their attack on me. No. When they smell blood in the water, they attack more. They go for it. They go for broke because you've just signaled that you can be toppled. And that's what they did to the SBC. This case with Johnny Hunt, it didn't make sense. 10 years later, now I think it was abuse. It was consensual all those years before, but now I think it's abuse. You don't do that. And so you end up seeing that the way they would cover up their attacking of people's reputations and character, the way they did that, well, the way they covered it up was very simple. Was to say that if you don't support them, you yourself are an abuser. It's to use fear to get you to tremble, to get you to bow down until, well, step 5, as they said across Politic, they get to everything, right? Whether it be America, they want everything. And it's kind of interesting because what you see going on in the Western world is you see the Marxists that are using the same game plan, but they're not the only ones using the same game plan. You see, the Muslims are using the same game plan on them. Yes, that's right. Everyone that's part of the devil uses the same game plan. So while the Marxists want to use the game plan against conservatives and against Christianity, Muslims are okay with letting them take the front line on that, but they're more than willing to wipe out the conservatives and Christianity as well. But you see, what they're doing is letting the Marxists do it, and then they're going to come in and do the same thing to the Marxists. They're already prepping. The Marxists have already given in. They've already caved to the Muslims. They're already sitting there saying, okay, and what do you have? You have Muslims in the streets right now that just stop traffic and pray in New York because Madani's going to allow it. You can't have a church in New York have their church bells playing, but you can have them, sitting there and doing prayers for 5 times a day before sunrise. This is what's happening right under people's noses. There's those of us, those who have been here for a long time. You have been hearing me give a cry about this for years. And this is not something that's going to be new to anybody here, a longtime listener of this audience. I've said for a long time, even when we started this show and it was Matt Slick and I remember we had someone come in and he was a professing atheist, and he wanted to talk about Islam and how we're so bad but Muslims aren't. And I ended up asking the guy, when you both sides agree, because he was saying that Muslims and atheists agree that Christianity is bad. I said, when Christianity is removed from society and it's now you versus the Muslims, who's going to win? Because the Muslims will die for what they believe in because they believe in an afterlife. Will you die for your beliefs on atheism? And he said, no. Well, okay then, right? This is the thing. And Jesse is saying here, let's see, let me put this up. He says, Marxists and Islam are bed buddies. They are to a point, Jesse. See, They are only to what the Muslims end is. Because the Muslims are using the Marxists as the Marxists undermine Christians. They both have the same target, ending Christianity as a force in culture, because for either of them to dominate, they have to do the same thing that you see documented by Cross-Politic, what they did in that episode with the SBC. They have to undermine them by making them feel like if you are against us, somehow you are morally lower. You're doing something that's unjust. And that's how they get people to cower. Why is it that the left is so frustrated with Donald Trump? It's very simple. You can call him racist all day long. He doesn't care because he knows he's not. That's the thing. How do you defeat these people? Ignore them. Really, that's what it comes down to. Listen, I started the Apologetics Live way back when. What was it, 2018? We started this, Matt Slick and I. And I've always credited Matt with some of the best advice I got in ministry. When I was started striving for eternity, for those who might be shocked, but I'm a dispensationalist, and I was kind of the poster boy back then for a lot of the theonomists, and they would attack dispensationalism. And I actually, I talked to privately and said, dispensationalists don't believe what you're saying. And one guy was like, yeah, but it gets the clicks. I'm like, that's deceitful, brother. You can't do it for attention. You got to speak truth. And so I remember just people who I thought were friends that would, knowingly say things to discredit things I'm saying, knowing that what they're saying is not true. But it got the tribe around them. It got the tribe to click on their stuff. I was so frustrated. I remember talking to Matt Slick once, and I asked him, he had told me, he says, listen, let me explain how ministry works. He says, what you end up seeing is that you get someone who gets into ministry. They find somebody who is bigger than them, and they go and attack that ministry. And they try to get their supporters and their followers to come in and be part of them. And then they move on to another ministry and do the same thing. And I'm like, that can't be the way ministry works. But he was right. That is what you see a lot of people doing online. They're platform builders. And I'll encourage you to go and read my article that I have out on TrueScript, truescript.org. Just do a search for my name, do a search for true ministry versus, or I think they called it ministry versus platform building. But there's a big difference between doing ministry and platform building. And what a lot of people are doing is platform building. They're trying to get a name for themselves. They're trying to get attention for themselves, but they're not doing ministry. That's no different than what you had with the SBC. A bunch of platform builders that were not concerned about truth. They wanted the attention, the fame, the money, the prestige for themselves. That doesn't change. And so we have to recognize that. Now, what's the advice Matt gave me? Because I couldn't believe when I realized Matt was right. I mean, it's so rare that guy is right. But no, when Matt was right, I said, Matt, how do you deal with this? And he gave me great advice. And this is what you see Trump doing. Matt said, you just keep producing good content and ignore them. So when people sit there and turn to Trump and say he's a racist, he ignores them and keeps going. When I've had people who slander me, some of you know it's now public that Josh Bice was going after me, slandering me with things, removed me from the cessationist film. You didn't hear me say anything about that back then. Why? And you didn't hear it from me first either. That came out from others who knew what happened. When Josh's situation occurred, some others pointed it out. But you see, you didn't hear it from me. You heard me as Greg Moore from Dead Man Walking said, he was amazed because he knew what Josh had done to me, and yet what was I doing? Saying, guys, we got to pray for his family. We got to pray for him and his family. I mean, he only knew how to do, he was only trained to do one thing. I don't know what he's doing for work now, but yes, What he did was wrong, but that doesn't take away our right to pray for a brother in Christ. And if someone wants to say, well, he's not a brother in Christ, then you should pray even more. You should be evangelizing, right? It doesn't stop because the guy disagrees with us or harms us or hurts us or says things. No. We still have the Christian responsibility to do the right thing. And so, but this is what you end up seeing. This is what Matt taught me to do. You ignore that nonsense. Because if you give into it, guess what? And in early years, I gave into a lot of that. I was trying to defend myself against false claims. And I found out they never go away. When you do that, that feeds that's putting chum in the water for the sharks. It just feeds them. And those people get revved up because, oh, we got something. And they do it, they go even more. This is what was happening in the SBC. And the more that people caved and said, okay, we'll give away our rights to attorney-client privilege, we'll give up this and we'll give up that and we'll give up this. Then okay, hey, you gave everything up. Now we can attack you. And who walks away? Well, Russell Moore walks away, and now he's the general editor of Christianity Today, destroying that magazine. I mean, he was already on a bad trajectory, but he just said, no, let's take it all the way down the hill. You know, and so this is what you end up having. Can the SBC recover? I don't know. I think it's going to be hard because so many of the conservatives have left. They gave up on it. There was a time when Mike Stone, and that was his first name, I couldn't remember earlier, but Mike Stone, he could have brought about, that could have changed it. But you see, the undermining was there. And that's what they did. And that's what they always do. That's how they operate. And so this is something that I wanted to play a lot more of the clips. And so I'm going to end up a bit early, but I was going to play a lot more of the clips. But with the echo, I'm sorry about that. And so let me just take a quick look at comments, see if there's any comments that I missed. Let's see. Andrew here says Trump was compared to Hitler. That still makes me laugh. It is because, they make that claim. How often did you hear Trump is a Nazi, Elon Musk is a Nazi, But see, the reason these guys get to be so good at what they do is because they don't sit there and deal with that. They just keep moving forward. And so, let me see. I'm seeing some references to people, the things I didn't pick up. Oh, I like this one. Andrew from Down Under says, wait, Matt was right? LOL. Yes. A broken clock, Andrew, is right twice a day. So Matt might have been right. Doesn't mean he's right on everything. Especially, his Presbyterianism, his belief that the gifts continued. Yeah, a whole bunch of things. So I'm just trying to see if there's any other comments from you guys, any questions that came up. Here's a question. I'll read it live with you guys because I didn't. I just wonder after all. Sorry, let me try that again. I just wonder after all that, how many just left the church? Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, but I know a lot of churches left the SBC. And so that's the thing that you end up seeing is I don't think they have the numbers to do anything. So let me let you guys know some places where I will be in case you want to join us. Now, I played the clips from Cross Politic. One of the guys is Gabe Wrench. Gabe is having a business makers conference, April, it's April 7th to the 9th. That's going to be in Dallas, Texas. And so if you just do a search, I forget the website, I think it's businessmakers.org, but just do a search on Business Makers Conference, Dallas, and I'm sure you'll be able to find that conference. I will be there. If you are in the tri-state area, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, in Levittown, PA, Pennsylvania on Friday, April 17th and Saturday, April 18th. We're going to be having an evangelism training with Hearts for the Lost at my church. So I'm really excited about this. Hearts for the Lost is a great ministry where they go to churches free of charge to train them on sharing the gospel. Now, they've honored me with allowing me to do a couple of the sessions, so we're going to do it together. So I'll do one session Friday night, one session Saturday. They'll do the rest, and then we go evangelize afterwards. So that is, you could find details at oxfordvalleychapel.org. That's oxfordvalleychapel.org, and it is what Hearts for the Lost calls their Compelled Conference. Also want to let you know, I'm looking forward to this, is the Truth Conference. I've been mentioning it here, but I'm a board member at the truthfellowship.org. And you got to have the in there. It's thetruthfellowship.org. But the Truth Fellowship we have a conference every year in May. And so May 1st to the 3rd in Tampa, Florida, we will be having our second annual conference. This is a conference that the Truth Fellowship is standing up against things like what happened in the SBC. The SBC is not alone. The guys that really started it, that were the moving force behind the Truth Fellowship, was the fact that they were of the free church, the easy free church. Evangelical free church. And so what ended up happening was they ran into it when the evangelical free started going social justice, and they stood up to it. So yeah, it's in many of the denominations. And so many of us from different denominations are standing up to say, no, we're going to stand for truth. And that's what the Truth Fellowship is about. You can go to truthfellowship.org. Lastly, I just want to, there's a couple other events, but I want to start promoting it early, is Open Air Theology's conference that they have in Tullahoma, Tennessee. Jeffrey Rice, I've been there, I think, for every one of the conferences they've done. I think this is like year 4 or 5, something like that, that they've been doing it. The theme this year is going to be abiding in Christ. And so looking at the text from John 15. So each of the speakers, several of the guys, you're going to see more coming out about that, but tickets will be out. Just if you do a search, I'll have the details as we get closer, but I'm sure you could search for Open Air Theology Conference. I'm sure you'll find it. So with that, I'll just give a mention to our sponsors as well, because they help continue to put us on the air so we're not behind a paywall. MyPillow, if you want to get yourself a great pillow, go to mypillow.com. Use the promo code SFE. That is how they know that you heard about them from us. They continue to support us. We greatly appreciate that. So get lots of pillows, like a lot. But that's one. The other is the software I use for my Bible software is Logos Bible software. I love Logos. I use it very often. You go to logos.com/SFE, logos.com/SFE. And Logos, I say, has always been known for being super expensive. However, now they do these things where they're doing it at a subscription rate. So if you don't want to buy all the books, you can just get the subscription, and you can up the subscriptions over time. So it makes it much more affordable, much better than going to Starbucks to get that coffee. Save the coffee, make it at home, and get yourself a Logos. Go to logos.com/SFE, get yourself some great Bible software. So, let me just check. See what we got coming up next week. So next week we're probably going to do, from the looks of this, the open Q&A that I had planned before I saw this episode from Cross Politic. So we'll probably do an open Q&A unless something else comes up. And then what we'll look to do on April 2nd is we're going to have some guys from the exchange. The podcast is the Gospel Exchange, but it's a way of sharing the gospel. If you listen to my Rappaport podcast, which you should, but I had an episode there with one of the guys, and And so he's going to come on. So if you go back to the Rappaport, go listen to the one I did with the Gospel Exchange so that you can get your questions ready for that. And please come in on April 2nd and ask us questions. There will be no show on the 9th of April because, as I said earlier, I will be, at that point, I'll probably be in the air on a flight headed home. So, but I'll be at the Business Makers Conference there. And then on the 16th, again, another one that I did on the Rappaport and bringing over is April 16th. We're going to have Adam Parker from Bold Apologia podcast. He has been doing a series on his podcast on Bill Johnson. And so go back and listen to the episode I did with Adam Parker on Bill Johnson on the Rappaport. And that will be something, you may want to listen and get a lot of questions. Now, I see a comment that just came in, and I do really appreciate this because, well, it's a super chat. We haven't been getting a lot of those, but Georgia gave $10. So thank you very, very much for that. And she said, appreciate all you do. Thank you. I don't mention it a lot on the show, but you can do a couple different things to support us. The best is to go to strivingfraternity.org. And support us on the website. That money gets directly to us. But you could do as Georgia did throughout the show and do a super chat. We appreciate that. I will read a super chat because it shows up different so that I can clearly see it. But and it sticks around for longer. By the way, just so you know, the way super chats end up working is the more money you give to a super chat, the longer of a message you can give and the longer it stays on the screen. So just so you know, if you ever want to support some of the podcasters or YouTubers that you're doing. You can also on YouTube become a member. There's a membership there. And so that's another way you can support us. And like I said, I gave you some of the sponsors. You could support us through there. I hope this was helpful. I hope you learned a lot. I hope that this was something you gained. I hope that you will go and listen to Cross Politic. I know some of you just go, no, I can't stand those guys. I disagree with those guys. I have beefs with their theology, with whatever. Okay? That aside, a broken clock's twice a day, right? Go and see what they had and do what I'm going to do. Go dig into the evidence. There's some of the things I already know. Reading the account with Johnny Hunt, that never sat well with me. The fact that these cases, like, Rachel Den Hollander made the argument that you can't question her client because this was a criminal. There's criminally investigated when there was no investigation by police. None. Like, that's the thing. They just make claims that are false. And this is what you see people do. They just say, oh, this happened. How do you know? We said so. Trust us. Look, you trust us because the police investigated and found there was guilt. Where's the police report? You can't see that. You can't know that. We got special knowledge. I mean, you're seeing this right now with Candace Owen and Tucker Carlson. They claim a special knowledge. They keep saying they got receipts, but they have data points. There's a difference between data points and evidence, okay? Just making a claim or just putting things together. Hey, this happened and this happened. There was a bank robbery and Andrew was at the bank that day. Yeah, that doesn't mean I robbed the bank. I happened to be at the bank that day and there was a bank robbery, right? That wouldn't, just because two events happened doesn't mean it's evidence that I robbed the bank. And I didn't rob a bank, for the record. And I wasn't in a bank where that was robbed, for the record. But you see how there's a difference between evidence and data. Okay? And so Georgia says, yes, this was helpful. So thank you for that. Let's see. I accidentally hit that one. So just looking to see. All right, I don't see any other comments. So with that, I see other comments, but none that I was to put up. So, folks, I hope this was helpful. If it was, do me a favor. Share this. Share it with others. Tell people how much you got out of it. If you find this helpful, whether in the video form or the podcast form, here's one of the best things you could do. Share it with 5 people right now. Just text out, hey, here's the link. Check this out. This is what I learned from it. This is how it was helpful to me. Then they're going to be more likely to go and check it out. All right. So that's some things you could do. Share this with others. Share it on your social media. It is one of the more helpful ways the more helpful things you could do, because that's how people find out about it. So I really appreciate it. I appreciate the kind comments. I really appreciate when you guys have questions. So next week, be ready. You can email us, by the way. If you do have questions that you want for next week, you can email us. Just contact us at info@sfe.bible. SFE stands for Striving for Eternity. So info@sfe.bible. That's the email. Send us your questions there, and we will get them for the show. And then the other thing you could do is even better is join the show live, join in the discussion, and ask the questions there. That's the best, because I hate being alone here. My co-hosts have all gotten busy. So Georgia says, last comment, she says, thank you. Have a good night. God bless. And I say the same. And so with that, may I remind you to strive to make today an eternal day for the glory of God. And we'll see you next time.